learn to like just be happy with where you're at. Don't look ahead, don't look behind. And it's like within film, that makes total sense too.
Today's show is sponsored by Enigma Elements. As filmmakers, we're always looking for ways to level up production value of our projects and speed up our workflow. This is why I created Enigma Elements, your one-stop shop for film grains, color grading LUTs, vintage analog textures like VHS and CRT images, smoke, fog textures, DaVinci Resolve presets, and much more. After working as an editor, colorist, post, and VFX supervisor for almost 30 years, I know what film creatives need to level up their projects. Check out enigmaelements.com and use the coupon code IFH10 to get 10% off your order. I'll be adding new elements all the time. Again, that's Enigma, ENIGMA, elements.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Luke Neumann, man. Thank you so much for being on the show, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. We've been trying to do this for a minute.
We have, yes.
We're two
Even
busy
back
guys.
before, like you're back in your early days. We were talking about it a bit, I think.
Yeah, exactly. We've been trying to do this for a while now, but finally our schedules have aligned
Yes.
to be on the show. So I appreciate you being on the show. Now, before we get into it, man, how did you get into the film business?
So way back in the day, I worked some crappy jobs back in my early days, and I was gonna get into like IT, so definitely went to college for like computer oriented stuff, and I had a knack for computer stuff. So at one point, I got injured on the job, herniated a disc. And,
what were you doing? Like lifting heavy gear?
Well, it's one of those things where I was lifting incorrectly like my whole life. And so it just happened in like a basketball game. I was playing basketball and just nothing crazy, just kind of went up for a shot and all of a sudden it really hurt. And so I got unemployment for like a month or two, something like that. And I kind of had this free time and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use this time to maybe try something that I really want to do that is kind of outlandish. And, you know, from my background, I don't live in LA. I live up in Oregon. And, you know, if you're in LA, doing film as a career is not that big of a deal. But up here, it's kind of like, and especially back then, this is 2007, 6. It's not something that, you know, your parents would, and my parents were super supportive, but I used those 2 weeks or those 2 months to just kind of teach myself kind of like what I could as far as editing. And that was kind of like my starting point because I already had the computer background.
Final Cut? On Final Cut?
Yeah. And then back then it was kind of like the camera thing was just starting to take off as far as DSLRs. So, but it hadn't quite taken off yet. So like I was using like Handycam, like Sony Handycams and stuff. And then DSLRs came out and back then my obsession was like shallow depth of field and, you know, everybody was using those Leadus adapters or whatever. And it was just way out of my price range back then. And then the Canon T2i came out and that was like $800. And I was kind of like, you know, I can afford that. I can do something with that. And it gives you the shallow depth of field and all that. And so I got one of those and I just started like do stuff with it and upload it to YouTube. And this was like YouTube wasn't super young at this point, but as far as
pretty young. It was like 2-3 years old. I don't even think Google had bought it yet.
Maybe not. I don't remember. But like at that point, especially like the indie filmmaking scene was still pretty new. And so I just started to get a lot of views just doing random stuff. And so I, you know, for the first month or two, I didn't think anything of it. And then as it started to go along, you get ideas for, okay, this isn't a business. Is this a business? Like, no, I'm not making any money. Like, no, it's not a business, but there's people watching. Can you turn it into a business? And so it just kind of, as far as my love for cameras, like that's all self-taught. I never had any formal training. My parents had like a VHS camera when I was a kid, and my friends and siblings would make like stop motion stuff and no editing. You'd have to edit in camera, like stop the VHS. And then, you know, there's a 3-second buffer. So when you hit record, you have to wait 3 seconds. And if you mess it up, you have to rewind the VHS and try and sync it up. And so,
but were you like super cool? And did you have 2 VHS decks together? And then did you cut between them? You weren't super cool. Got it.
No, it was one of those things to like the resources just to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
I didn't have them, and B, I wasn't that into it to where I'm like going to take the time to. I hadn't edited any video until I got this little tiny point and shoot camera that was able to take video on an SD card, and that was like a game changer. It's like, oh, I can edit on the computer. That's easy. But yeah, editing to tape, I never got into that. It always seemed like too big of a deal. And at that time I was like in high school.
Sure.
So it wasn't a big I had other passions back then, but self-taught after that point with DSLRs and just kind of trial and error, and then just grinding and moving up from there, like, as best you can.
Now tell me a little bit about your YouTube channel, because that kind of, put you on the map a bit, didn't it?
I mean, as far as business goes, yeah. And how that fits within the traditional film industry, like that's still changing, right? But back then it was
on an hourly basis.
Yeah. And back then it was nothing. It was like there was no connection at all. So the YouTube channel, I don't remember, and maybe it is when Google bought YouTube. That's when monetization came into it.
It was a while. No, it was like there was monetization, but you had to like apply to get in, and it was and there was very few people were getting it. And then slowly it opened up to everybody else.
Right. And even then, the monetization has never been a big income stream for us. Even in in the time when our YouTube channel was doing the best, it paid a couple bills. Like that's about as best as it did. So making the leap to like, okay, you're not making money on this thing, but creating an online business outside of that, and then this is your customer base. Like that was the big leap to where it became a full-time thing.
So all right, so on a business standpoint, you saw you had an audience, and then you were like, how can I monetize this audience? How can I be of service to this audience in one way, shape, or form? Because you were getting basically free marketing through your YouTube channel. Is that basically the way it was?
Exactly. And more or less, you could advertise your own products, not necessarily just through a straight up commercial, but you could do a tutorial and talk about them, or you could kind of like go in depth and tie it to the content that you're already making on the channel. So yeah, the first step we kind of took was writing royalty free music, because up until that point I was using like Video Copilot stuff, Pro Scores or whatever. And, you take a lot of time and you work on this little short film or whatever, and then you're using a song that if you searched YouTube, it's in 100, 200 different, and it totally ruins. I'm a musical person. So it totally ruined it for me. I was like, even if it sounds like total garbage, I'd rather learn how to write music, and at least it's unique, right? At least it's a new thing. And so I just started to like write albums, like albums for specific video uses, like wedding music. And that's kind of how the online store started. And then you see returns there, and then you kind of just build from there. So
I want to kind of make a point of this too, because I've spoken to so many filmmakers in my lifetime, and very few have this kind of entrepreneurial spirit. It's not a thing that is taught. It is not a thing that it's not sexy. It can be sexy, especially when there's lots of money in place, and the entrepreneur has become the new rock star of the before it was Dr. Lawyer. Now that's not cool to be. Now I want to be an entrepreneur. Shark Tank helped with that. So in the filmmaking space, there's very few people talking about this. And you saw it right away. I obviously have that same kind of gift. That, like I saw it right away. Yep. What caused that? Like, where did that come from?
Necessity, probably.
That's always a great place.
That like needing money and not getting it from the thing I'm putting time into. And
that's a great motivator, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And on top of that, the space was less crowded back then, right? I could do something like color grading LUTs or whatever, and 2 other people were doing it. So,
and did you make a good amount of money doing those kind of products?
Yeah. Back in the heyday, it was like, because we've taken a lot of time off, and our audience connection now is nothing what it used to be. But like during when we were really peak and going at it on YouTube, it was like we released some products, and it was within the first hour like $5,000 or
Nice.
And it's back then that was just like, hey, we're doing something right here. And
Right.
so, not every product was like that. That was
No, of course.
that was a really good one. And beyond that, just the space being less crowded made it easier. So it's kind of just a product of like a little luck, definitely, with being
Timing.
being in YouTube before there's a million people doing this. That meant like, well, there's just less competition and therefore we can get more of that income. Now I don't know if the same strategy would work.
Yeah, when I talked to the Rocket Jump guys, they said the same thing. Like, we would never in a million years be able to break through today, but because they were in literally, I think in 2010, they knew ways of hacking YouTube to get their videos on the front page of YouTube. Can you imagine?
Right. And you would think like, it'd be easy to say like, oh, the entrepreneurial spirit I would find a way, but it's like, it's so competitive now. I would probably knowing
it's a lot more work.
Yeah. And I would look at it as a lost cause. I'd move on to a different career. not to be a total downer. I mean, there's still people that are going to rise to the top. Right. But
always.
It is just, it worked out for me because of the timing. And I'm not like that motivated to I'm not a huge entrepreneur. Like, I pivot very quickly. If something's not working, I pivot.
So then, and your channel was basically made up of, making short films and tutorials about how you made those short films. And then you incorporated your products in those tutorials, like the LUTs and the music and things like that. So it's a great market. I mean, it's funny because I had something similar, and I always say this story and it pisses me off because I was on YouTube in 2005 with tutorials.
That's like having Bitcoin in like 2010.
I literally had I was into YouTube 2005 with filmmaking tutorials.
Yeah.
There was nobody on YouTube in 2005. It was literally, I think, year 1 or year 2 of YouTube. You can check it out. They're still on YouTube from old channels that I had. And I decided, obviously I didn't have the vision to say, oh, YouTube was the way and this, we're going to make a career out of it. I didn't have that vision. But I did sell 5,000 DVDs with all those tutorials on it. So I knew there was a market for it. Yeah. But I decided, oh, I'm a filmmaker. I'm not a teacher. I'm not doing that. I got to make my Reservoir Dogs. I don't have time to be making these tutorials.
Yeah, because the saying is just in the back of your head, like, if those that can't teach, you're just like, no.
Exactly. And I literally could own the filmmaking space on YouTube if I chose to, if I would have just got my ego out of the way. And it took me 10 years before I came back in with Indie Film Hustle, where, as you say, on YouTube it's very difficult for me to break through. And I've still been able to build up a community through that, but still, I mean,
I would say our story is it's not the same because we weren't in that early, but if I would have known where it went, I would have gone a lot harder in 2010, 12,
and you would have built up a huge business.
Right. And
it's kind of like what Rocket Jump did.
Right. And there was an aspect of still, even like 2014 or 15, like I didn't know what YouTube was going to be. So I was taking a lot of time trying different things and trying to build a traditional film career in some ways, and not putting all my eggs in the YouTube basket. So hindsight's always 2020.
Of course. Is it true? I think we're similar vintages. So how old are you?
I'm 35.
All right, so not similar. We're about a decade apart, but still, we've walked across the same dead bodies, if you will, in the film industry.
Yes. We've seen them come and go.
We've seen them come and go, exactly. But do you find that not only your ego getting in the way of like I'm a true filmmaker, but building out a business on YouTube? If you would have kept going down that path, you think you would have definitely made a full blown business on it. You could have obviously had millions of followers at this point in the game.
Maybe. I mean, I would imagine because it takes a lot of work. Like I've tried to do YouTube consistently, like in the way that you're supposed to do YouTube, and I can't keep up with it. So just my personality is like, I probably wouldn't have lasted too long, but if I would have hunkered down and done twice as many videos, like it would have just been a bigger business overall. But at this point, YouTube's changed so much, and especially the space that we're in, to where the followers are not useless, but I'm going to be real for a second, but it's like you're just not getting the viewership and the audience retention.
It's diluted.
And
it's too diluted.
yeah. And the upside of having an audience now, honestly, is just to show possible investors, to show other people like, hey, we have a YouTube channel with this many subscribers. Like, it looks good on paper, and sponsors and other people like that. But as far as the actual use of having those subscribers now, it's not as useful.
It's not as because again, I think the users on YouTube are it's just dilution. It's dilution. Yeah. Like there's literally thousands of people doing tutorials on how to make film.
Right. And if you were to build it in, like, equate the number of subscribers to the success of the business, you would have had to have transferred all your viewers over to the business in like 2014 or 15. So like the point now, like, even though if we had 1 million subscribers now and I come up with a new business idea, it doesn't mean nearly as much as those 1 million subscribers 5 years ago.
Yeah, and that's kind of, and again, I'll bring Rocket Jump back into it. I think that's kind of what they found is they may have 7 million subscribers, but
right.
it doesn't translate to the cash that it used to.
Right. You might have like 500,000 actual people that are engaging, and there might be your actual customer base.
And that's a big maybe. And that's still a big still a big maybe at that point, because if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or they're not providing the service that they have, or the value that the value proposition that they gave them originally, because they've changed. I'm not trying to beat up on Rocket Jump. I know the boys, but
no.
You know, but
they're pretty open about what they think about the current climate.
Right. They definitely are open about that. They're open about, you know, what their business model is. And they kind of like, they went off and started doing shows and doing other things, and kind of left YouTube a little bit, you know, and they would just kind of jump in for marketing of their new product, as opposed to really truly feed that beast. It's, you know, we talk about this now. I can only imagine where we're going to be in 5 years, in 10 years. Like it's changing so rapidly. But I think still, though, the fundamentals of business still always will be the same. Do you have an audience that's attracted to? Can you reach an audience, and can that audience be given something to either better their lives, entertain them, do something, some sort of service or a value proposition? And that's where you can monetize at a certain point. Even in a free, and even in a free platform like you did, you put up a YouTube, you were able to sell products, you were able to sell affiliates, you know, other things like that, right?
Yeah, and I think one big mistake we made with the growth of our channel is, at one point, I was just kind of like, you know, I know everybody's tutorials and stuff is free, but I'm like, it's, you know, it's content that should be charged. Maybe we can set a precedent and it can change YouTube. So I took all of our tutorials and I'd made them paid products.
And what happened to that, sir? How'd that work out for you?
It killed it. You know, totally killed it. But I was at the point where I was kind of like done doing tutorials. I was like, I don't even like doing this anymore. So I'm just going to charge, and I'm going to move on to do something that I want to do. And so, you know, I think it takes, if you want to build consistently, you have to always be on it, and you have to, you know, for 5-10 years, just always be all about your audience. Like, that's hard. It's really hard.
Hey, listen, man, I do it through podcasting, and I'm now at 300 and almost 320 episodes of as of this recording. And I mean, I look behind me and I don't see anyone. I'm like, oh, what am I alone over here? Like, And I saw a bunch of guys, you know, I came in 2015. It's not like I've been doing this for a decade. Like, I just came in 3.5-4 years ago. And it's just that consistent, you know, pounding of the pavement and being able to provide that value to my audience and building that connection in a special way with the audience, which makes all the sense in the world to me. I mean, and I love doing, I see videos as a whole. That's a lot more work. Like podcasting is a lot easier. Like, but even in podcasts,
like, if you didn't enjoy doing it, that's a lot of time in your day that you're spending doing. So that's kind of like, I think I took the foot off the gas because I stopped liking the YouTube, like doing YouTube.
Right.
You know, so
now you also built up a production company as well, right?
I mean, more or less. That just kind of goes like, we do our own editing, obviously filmmaking, color grading, and some music. So, that's a small scale production company.
Sure, but that's still it's still a company that you're making a living. You're making a living with it,
right? And we've been hired. Like we got hired by Panasonic to do everything from the color grade to the music to. So we've had some bigger clients.
All because of YouTube. All because of YouTube.
Oh yeah, totally.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the point I'm trying to make is that you've built this brand that is you. The Luke Neumann brand. And because of the YouTube following and because of what you're doing there, Panasonic's like, oh, you're using my products. Let's bring you in. It's kind of like what did with Blackmagic did with me, because they saw I was doing, shooting features with Blackmagic. I was editing on Resolve when nobody was editing feature films on Resolve, let alone, $1 million. I was doing, I did rocket jumps, Dimension 404. Yeah, I did 404. I did all their color and post-supervising, not post-supervising, but color grading and exporting, all done in Resolve, and VFX placements and all that stuff was all done in Resolve. And it was like a $7 million show. Yeah. You know, it was a massive show.
Yeah.
And Resolve.
And they jumped all over that, right? I mean,
well, they didn't, the post supervisor, he reached out to me, and then I told him, he's like, what are you going to do with everything? And I'm like, I'm going to color grade and Resolve. And like, okay, great. Cause that's standard, but then I'm going to master and Resolve, and I'm going to do all the, I think it was 2,500 visual effect shots, for the entire series. So it was a massive amount of it all done in Resolve, and no one was doing that at the time that I was doing it, and Blackmagic.
It was probably bare bones timeline stuff, right? Like,
it was still it was a DaVinci Resolve 12 point. I think it was 12 or 12.5, and at that point it had become a serious editor. Like before that, it hadn't been. It was like but 12.5 is when it really kind of like took off, and it was like, oh, this is a real editing system. And I was jumping from Final Cut because I refused to go to Premiere, because I'm old enough to remember when Premiere sucked, and I just can't get that out of my head.
It still sucks.
So I know a lot of people were like, what are you saying? Like, look, let's not get into that battle.
Sorry, Adobe. I don't mean it, but
I know. But yeah, so I jumped to Resolve, and that's where I kind of made my bones, and I just became an editor in Resolve. I'm like, this is easy because I already know color. I already know the software, and editing is great. Sound is amazing. Now you put Fusion in there. It's insane. It's insanity. Now, I've just
started to move over to it, and it's like, it's a bit of a learning curve, but you can already see after 2 days of just like, it's going to be a lot. Yeah.
And it's free. It's literally free. It's pretty much, or you have to spend $300.
I'm doing 8K, so I have to get the 301.
Wow, a whole $300. Wow, it's insane. It's insane for an entire package that used to cost $1 million plus.
Right.
It's insane. Now, what you also made kind of? I love the aesthetics of your films. On YouTube. They look beautiful. They really look very nice, very polished. Because there's a lot of short films, and you look at them like, oh, that was shot with a mini DV camera. Right. It's just so, and it has some, and if I'm not mistaken, it has some visual effects in it. It does have
some.
Yeah, it has some really polished look to it. What kind of, how did you go after that aesthetic, and then to build the tutorials around it?
So like, it started with the camera because I was so self-taught and new. I probably bought into the hype a little bit of like, the marketing of like a better camera will make you better. And so I moved up from like the DSLR to the buy-in red, the Scarlet, and then just kept going up. And each time I would get that new camera, I did kind of feel a pressure of like, I have a nice camera, like I can't fuck this up. Like I need to bring in lights now, and I need to do these other things that come along with this higher end camera. Whereas before, like maybe I had one light, like now I invest in some more lights and ways to move the camera. I was really into drones kind of before they were a big thing, and wanted to work aerials in and all that stuff. So it kind of started with the camera because I moved up, and then anamorphic lenses, like I got into that, and the aesthetic, became a big part of it because as somebody that was self-taught with like a VHS camera, I was so behind the curve on the aesthetic that I always thought, if I can just get up to like acceptable levels, then I can go back to just like telling stories. And the acceptable level of cinematography. And I really got into cinematography. Right now, I'm not as into it because I've kind of hit that point where it's like,
let me hire somebody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's like to go further, it requires 10 times more work for maybe not any more money. And I just don't like the job of cinematography enough to do it. Like I like making films and I like the process of telling stories, but the actual job requirements of being a DP.
Oh, it's brutal. I did my first feature. I DP'd my first feature, and after that, I was like, I'm gonna let somebody else do this.
It's a lot of technical stuff. Like you don't get to, like one
enjoy.
Of the things I like. Yeah, right. A lot of like what I like in filmmaking is being able to kind of just play pretend, right? Like you get to play pretend and make cool stuff, and the technical aspect of filmmaking, it's always going to be there because it's a technical field, but like an actor, they more or less get to just bask in that creative side of filmmaking 90% of the time. Like there's technical stuff like stand here, make sure you're looking at the camera. But a lot of time you just get to play pretend, and DP, it's like 80-20, like you're in technical mode a lot of the time.
Right. As they should be. I mean,
they have to be.
It's their technical job. It's a technical, it's a very technical job.
Right.
Now, when you were building, what's first of all, what's the biggest lesson you learned running your companies, production company or any of the companies that you work on?
Definitely. I learned a lot about like maintaining a pulse on the audience. That was big. Like when I made the tutorials, when I charged for those, it wasn't so much the lack of viewership. It was more of just like I kind of put a barrier up between me and my customer base, my audience, and that's hard to get back, right? Like you have to grind to get that back. So always kind of like keeping their wants and needs kind of at the forefront is something that even if you're having a bad day and it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, that's going to happen. And you need to like kind of just like walk away and take the day off, but don't do rash stuff like charge for all your tutorials because, that sends a bad message. And
that's the thing. It's like you were charging for the tutorials that were free.
Yes.
So that is where the problem lies. Like if you would have created new tutorials in this kind of more, more elite product, that's different conversation. But you were just like, screw it. I'm going to start charging. And that's
I'm going to cash out. I'm going to cash out now. Like I'm going to just like make money on these tutorials because I don't want to do them anymore. Right. So,
and then the YouTube said, no. That's so much.
The thing was like I did it, but I made more money on monetizing. Like nobody rented them, so I was making more money monetizing those videos than I did on renting them.
Right, so. and that's another kind of great tip for people out there is thinking outside the box for revenue streams, which you definitely did. And if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of go over some of the revenue streams that you created off of this one idea, which was the YouTube thing. So if I'm, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So you created, obviously the failed tutorial rentals. We all fail, man. That's how you learn. Fail and fail often is what I say.
Yes.
So you created a LUT series. So all these kind of different color grading LUTs. For anybody who doesn't know what a LUT is kind of like something, a color, what do you call it? Like
it's like a color filter on your phone.
Filter, thank you. Yeah, KQ. It's a color filter that you slap on, and it's a good starting point to make things look pretty cinematic or pretty cool, or if it's a different kind of look. Like if I want the Matrix look, which you won't get because you didn't do the production design. But
I will branch off here, but selling LUTs, that's one of the hardest things to get across is like, I create this LUT based on a look like we're filming something at night, right? So it's got a very specific and people, they apply it to like a daylight shot that the white balance is off on. They're like, what's this LUT so bad for? I'm like, because you need to have the before shot looking like,
But also on a business standpoint though, man, like that is a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche audience. So it's a very specific audience. You have to be educated to know what it is, how to properly use it, and the value that you get from it. So you're basically looking at colorists or filmmakers who understand color to a certain extent or proficient in that. So your pool of potential customers drops dramatically. Is that fair to say?
Back then, now there's a ton of people. Like almost every YouTube channel I look at, it's like they have a preview for their LUTs. So it's definitely one of those things. It's more in the pool. Yeah, the pool's grown. Back then, I definitely had to do tutorials, kind of explaining like the benefits of the product. Right.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
As filmmakers, we're always looking for ways to level up production value of our projects and speed up our workflow. This is why I created Enigma Elements, your one-stop shop for film grains, color grading LUTs, vintage analog textures like VHS and CRT images, smoke, fog textures, DaVinci Resolve presets, and much more. Check out enigmaelements.com and use the coupon code IFH10 to get 10% off your order.
And now back to the show.
Explaining like the benefits of the product, right? Like, you know, you get done in one click what would normally take you 20, right? Like it just kind of speeds up everything. So now I could probably release some LUTs and not say a single thing about how to use them, not say a single thing about like what they do. It's like they're definitely, you know, in the knowledge base at this point.
So LUTs, you know, you had a series of LUTs that you released, which, you know, me being a colorist, people, it's like, why don't you do LUTs? I'm like, I don't want to do LUTs, man. I got too many things going on and I'm tired and I just don't want to. It's like you got to sit there and build it out, export it properly. You got to set it all up. And that's just like, it's not my thing.
The only way I do them is like, if I don't release them too quick. Like when a camera comes out, I use the camera and I accrue footage and work on projects where I just like, it'll be specific to that project and I'll just make sure I save a LUT for that look. And, you know, hopefully after like 6 months, I have 10 built up that are worthwhile. Right. But if I had to sit down and create them from scratch, like, I don't know if I could do it.
So it's LUTs, and then after that, you're looking. The next revenue stream was the music. You were creating original music and original music packages like cinematic hits and stings and things like that, which is a unique thing by one per. It's usually companies who create that, not one guy.
Right.
And those have done well for you as well.
Yeah, and that was one of those things to where it started with, hey, we're selling it on our site, and then we also put those same files out on some stock music sites. So we were, you know, creating one thing was all of a sudden getting income from like 4 or 5 different areas,
revenue streams, right?
Yeah, and then the nice thing was like promoting that on YouTube. Then came the client work specifically for music, which was another revenue stream. You know, so it's kind of like doing one of those things, and if you split them up and kind of send them off different places, you can turn that into multiple. So for everyone listening, I want everyone to understand this. Again, this is something that people just don't talk about. So putting out LUTs and putting out music by themselves, the advertisement of what you do is a product in itself and creates revenue streams. Then the awareness of those products, say, can bring you actual paid gigs based off of that. And the same thing happens for, hey, I love the Panasonic GH5. I'm using it constantly. I'm doing it for free and I'm doing other things, but then all of a sudden you get Panasonic gets wind of it and now they hire you. So it's about thinking of more of the ecosystem of what you can create and all these multiple revenue streams. Would you agree that, and I find this so hard for people to understand, is they put all their eggs in one basket, meaning like this one movie that I'm going to cash out on. I'm going to mortgage my house on one movie with no stars that has it's a drama piece that's going to be shot in black and white on Super 8. You know, and that's what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna and my distribution plan is Sundance. But that's where filmmakers go, and then all of a sudden they put all their eggs, all the chips are on the table, and they crap out. My advice has always been like, take some business classes, like you know, it's one of those things like that's just bad. That's just a bad financial decision, right? Like I think to be successful in anything that you kind of create your own path for. So like making a film is definitely, it's up to you to make a successful product out of it. And that, let's face it, a lot of filmmakers want to say like, no, it's art. Like, no, it's a product. Like,
it's art.
People buy
it. It's art at $5,000, or if it's $100,000 that you can lose, then it's art. Yeah. If not, it's commerce, guys. I hate to tell you. Right?
And well, it's like you're going to put $20,000 of your own money into this unless you're funded. And it's like, I hope you have a plan to make that back.
Right.
So, I think just kind of, it seems like a lot of filmmakers, they kind of have that dreamer's mentality where it's just like, it's going to go this way. And they hyper focus on like, this is the way it's going to be successful, when it's like, you need to have 10 backup plans for how to recoup your revenue if it doesn't happen.
Right. And that's the difference between someone who has a career and one person who has enough to make one movie that never gets to see the light of day. And they're off doing a job for the rest of their life that doesn't make them happy.
Right.
Because they were so foolish. And look, I've been there. You've been there too.
I'm only able to say that because I have experience. Like I've done it.
I spent $50,000 on a short film. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. But then my first two features were done for $5,000 and $3,000. Yeah. So, and they monetized, and I was able to make money with all of those films.
Yeah.
And that short film, it got me gigs, but I looked it over and with my wife, and I was like, it was probably not the best investment that we ever made. I'm like, it kind of maybe broke even. It took about a decade of work and things like that literally got jobs because of it. Yeah. But, and it's nice on the reel, but still not. Not so much.
That's the weird thing is there's all these other things that come up when you do that, connections with people that sometimes, a connection with that person leads to some money. So I think doing the thing, even if you don't make the money back directly, as long as you put yourself into it,
it's smart about it. It's a gray area. Yeah, but it's also to be smart about it, man, and learn how to monetize, learn how to create an actual business around film business.
Yes.
If not, you would have just made a few short films and you'd be working somewhere, doing work that you hate. Like it's a great quote I always use is, most people die at 20 and get buried at 90.
Yeah.
And isn't that like the most perfect quote?
Yeah. Well, I was on that path. I mean, I was working jobs that I hated. I mean, working in an office, and I was just like,
this is horrible.
I can't do this. Yeah.
So you had sound, you had LUTs, music LUTs, and then what other revenue streams were you able to create off of this?
Stock video is always one of them.
Okay.
Directly from narrative stuff, which a lot of people don't seem to like make sense of. But, it's like if you have a failed short film, it's like, splice some of that up and make some stock footage money on it. But, even just deleted scenes from a music video or something, like sometimes the stock video that you don't think makes sense as stock video sometimes makes some of the best stock videos. So we did pretty well with stock video. And that's the reason we're getting into it now, is because it was probably our most successful revenue stream during that time.
And it's amazing because people, don't talk about stock video as much because it still has kind of like that bad taste in people's mouth with stock video is like so cheesy and bad. But now, I mean, some of the stuff that I'm seeing is like, what? Like that's a great opening shot that I can use for my feature, that helicopter shot. I mean, why wouldn't you buy it?
Yeah. And it's one of those things of like, when I think of stock, well, I don't think of that now because I'm in the game, so to say, but I know what people's first thought of stock footage is, and it's the people in the office with the really bad front lighting, right? It's just
typing on a computer.
And the reason for that is like, well, that was kind of the norm back in early 2090s. Like that was cinematography back then.
Sure.
Not so much, but it's
for corporate. It was all done for corporate. Nobody was doing it for cinematic or content. There wasn't as much content being created.
And so now in 2019, it's like, well, yeah, obviously that doesn't fly. Nobody wants that footage. So, with stock footage, you kind of want to give the client and the customer what's kind of going on right now, what's hip and what looks good. And so it's, the cinematography style going on right now. You'll see better looking shots in stock footage.
Yeah. And also the camera and the gear was just so much cheaper now to get. Back then it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge thing too.
And now you have a stock footage company now that you've opened.
Yeah, so that kind of just stemmed from like we would sell our shots to a company for a set amount, right? Like
a buyout.
$15. Yeah, $15 for shot, and then they get it. And in large doses, that was pretty good. But then you look on their website, it's like our footage is like the most downloaded stuff. And so it's kind of like, well, we're not getting the best part of this deal. No way. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't do it. And so just kind of accruing a huge library of footage over the years, from shooting stock footage, and just kind of, it takes time. Like you got to shoot stuff you don't want to shoot. You got to shoot stuff you really want to shoot. And it's kind of this give and take. And we had a library of stuff that we were going to sell. And at one point, we had talked about starting our own stock footage site for 5 years. And just at a certain point, it just all kind of lined up to pull the trigger and do it. So we launched that in December.
Nice.
Savage stock.
And is it doing well?
It started really slow. It started really slow, but we launched like right around Christmas.
Sure, not a great time to launch for stock footage.
Just a bad time. But we knew like, but we're gonna do our marketing. We're gonna do our big pushes in the spring anyway. So let's just get it out there now. And so it's starting to pick up, and we've kind of shifted. We started as like, we're gonna be a subscription based thing, and we're gonna try and like cover everything, and it's just kind of naturally shifted to like, we're just more niche, and 8K is our thing. So it's more like dealing with individual customers on a single project basis, and just kind of, it's more rights managed and working with clients for 8K stuff.
Right, because that's a niche right now. There's not as much 8K. It's like, that's the way you break through. That's the way you break through.
Pretty much. So we have the ability, like we have the business model in place to kind of be the everything stock company, but we're kind of going after the 8K thing. Just right now, 8K is not going to be the hot thing forever. So it's kind of like, once that kind of dies down, then we'll kind of shift 8K to being just 16K. Part of the library.
16K.
And to me, it's like, that's a big thing of a lot of people say like, oh, who needs 8K? It's like, some people do. When we launched it as an 8K thing, I didn't think I thought this might have benefits 5 years from now. That's what I was thinking of. Like, I don't know where 8K is yet at with everybody right now. But right away, it's like the technology side, the display side of things is way ahead of where the camera side of things is. And so there's people doing stuff in 8K right now.
It's fascinating that you guys have been able to, off of throwing a couple videos up on YouTube, you've been able to build out a business, multiple businesses, multiple revenue streams that has maintained you as a filmmaker and has kept you alive, and you've strived in that environment. You're still hustling, you're still working, you're not living in the lap of luxury. None of us are. No. But we're making a living doing what we love to do.
Yeah. And when I left the kind of corporate 9-to-5 job and I decided to do filmmaking, my motto was always, I'd rather make like 25% as much money doing something I love than doing something I don't. It's like, my goal has always been just to make a living. Obviously, like, want to shoot higher, but still, like, as the baseline, I try to just like be happy for what I have, and I'm not in an office. You gotta remind yourself of that. Like, you're able to do what you want, which is definitely worth it.
I had another director on who it was an amazing interview where he does Lifetime movies. He's directed 60 some films. He's produced over 100. These are all features, all for
Lifetime.
No, like Lifetime and International and Hallmark and that.
But he's with Lifetime right now.
No, he just jumps. He's a freelancer. But what he does is, his business model was that he doesn't want to find money for movies, so he just goes to the production company and goes, "Hey, hire me to do my script." And once that relationship is built, they don't even bother him. They're like, "Yeah, here's $300 grand.
Here's make
$300 grand. Go make it."
Yeah.
and give it to us at the end. We don't even want to talk about it. Like that's it. But he's built that trust up over the years.
Oh yeah.
And when I tell that to people, they're like, "Oh, Lifetime." Oh, and we actually talk about it in the interview. I'm like, people must look at like, "Oh, you make Lifetime movies? Oh, you make Hallmark movies?" And I literally said, "I'm like, are you effing kidding me? This man shoots. I think he shoots about. I'm not exaggerating. About 8 to 9 movies a year." Okay, I'm not even kidding you. 8 to 9 movies a year. He turnkeys them. He writes all of them. He directs all of them, and he produces all of them. He's making a very good living doing what he loves to do. So if anyone has a problem with that, go F yourselves, because I mean, I don't care he's happy, man.
Well, if anybody has a problem with that, it's like you need to, like I said, everybody wants to hit the slap shot all the time.
Everybody,
and it's like you need to hit singles. You need to have backup plan upon backup plan. And the key is, if you're currently in one of those backup plans, be happy, because like I've always thought like life is a series of peaks and valleys. And if you just like, for the past 5 years, I've just tried to learn how to like be happy in the valleys, because it's like, then you're like, if your standards are so high that it's like you're only happy when stuff's going like perfectly, it's like you're gonna be happy like 5% of your life.
Exactly. And I actually, I'm going to quote Tim Ferriss on this. You know, Tim Ferriss is right.
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss, the author of the 4 Hour Work Week, he said once, I don't know where I heard it, he say it, but he said, it's like, people are always so scared of being like, poor. Like, or like, oh, I don't have a place to sleep tonight, or I'm only going to be able to eat beans for a week. He goes, why don't you try doing that? Why don't you sleep on the floor in your house for a week? And why don't you just eat beans for a week and see that it's not as bad as you think? So then you won't be afraid of those valleys as much, and you can hang out there if you need to, because we all have peaks. We all have peaks and valleys, man.
Everybody.
Even
if it's not a financial peak and valley, like it'll be a mental peak and valley,
emotional,
health-wise.
It's something. There's always a peak and valley in one avenue of your life or other. That's called life. But if you're comfortable in, at least acceptable and comfortable, and not terrified about that, it makes life a lot easier to live, man.
For sure. Yeah. So like doing Lifetime, it's like, well, what's the alternative?
Well, I mean, he's making Hallmark movies. He's making and he makes the Dog Saves Christmas movie. He makes the Killer.
No, but I mean, anybody that would like kind of shit on that, it's like, but like, there's much worse things you could do in the video world, in the film world, or you could just simply not do anything. It's like, it's a hard business.
Exactly. But my point is, like, he shoots everything. He shoots thrillers, he shoots westerns, he shoots he goes it's not just the same movie again and again. He shoots all sorts of things, like The Dog That Saves Christmas, The Babysitter's Gonna Kill You. Like he makes everything, but he does western. He just did a western with Val Kilmer. Wow. Like, I was like, holy cow. That's so awesome. With I'll be
only one other person can say they've done that, right? I mean, has Val Kilmer been in any other western aside?
I think he's been in
Tombstone,
a couple, but not many. But not many. But anyway, still, like, I don't know about you. That's I'm okay
a good
with
party.
That.
Like, if you could talk about that in a party, like, that's a cool topic to talk about. That's all you need to know.
Exactly. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions. I ask all of my guests, sir. What advice would you give a filmmaker wanting to break into the business today?
The YouTube business?
No, the film business.
Just anything.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to stick with what I've already said. Have a backup plan.
To the
backup plan for that backup plan. Like, and not necessarily an abandonment of working in the industry, but like, you want to have your main goal and you kind of strive for that so that you have the drive, right? If you aim for the moon, then you're going to be chugging and you're going to be pushing really fast and really hardcore. That's what you want. But the key is to be happy along the way. So that means like have backup plans and ways to sustain. Don't get burnt out. Have ways to sustain your path to that kind of like main goal that you have. Because if you burn yourself out, you're not going to have money or even the creative drive to like get there. Yeah, because it's not gonna happen fast.
I mean, I wanted to be a director since I went into film school, but I got into post, and that's where I made my living until I started directing.
And if you throw family and stuff into that,
let's not get into that.
It's like, it's like, it's part of getting older. Like it's just part of getting older. I think everybody has to go through it. So it's kind of just like keep your head on your shoulders, do your best, and there's a lot of stuff that's out of your control. So
now, can you tell me a book that had a biggest impact on your life or career?
Can I say movie? I didn't read a lot when I was younger.
Sure.
I mean, I read what I had to read, but
okay. So say a movie.
Raising Arizona.
Great movie. I love that movie.
The humor, the style, everything about it. Like I thought it was funny. And it was one of those movies my family would watch a lot.
And it was a follow-up to Blood Simple, which was a complete opposite in tone
from the Coen brothers.
Yeah. A complete opposite. That's why I love the Coen brothers so much.
It was just like a cult classic within my family back in the day, and we still make jokes about it today.
It's still great. It's still great.
Yeah, like little inside jokes about some of the characters in that movie. We still like the inside jokes are still in our family. So that one. Last of the Mohicans was a big one. Specifically like the finale where it's just music, like there's some sound effects, but there's no talking. It's just a song and then action. Like
Michael Mann, honestly, so at he was at his peak during that Heat.
Yeah. That
Last
3-year stretch, that 4-year stretch.
Yeah. I was like,
yeah. So, books is hard. Like I can't think of one that really inspired me to do anything film related. So,
Rebel Without a Crew.
Movies.
You never read Rebel Without a Crew? Robert Rodriguez? You gotta go read that book, dude. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And then you should also read my new book, Shooting for the Mob.
Okay.
I'll tell you all about it later.
That seems like how was it writing a book?
Well, this one was very difficult because it was about the darkest time of my entire life.
Okay.
So about, me almost making a $20 million movie for the mafia, and then also being flown out to LA and meeting the biggest movie stars in the world and biggest producers in the world, all while, having a gangster in tow. So it's a very difficult book for me to write, but it was like anything, like doing YouTube videos, like doing podcasts.
Yeah.
One step at a time, one brick at a time. Just every day I'm like, I'm going to write 500 words today. I'm going to write 1,000 words today. And I just kept pounding it until it was done. And it's because if you look at the mountain, you'll never climb it. You just got to take that step. You got to take that step. Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Probably the one we've already talked about of just appreciating the valleys. Like that's taken me a long time as somebody that was super driven in my early 20s and just, I just wanted to go so fast.
We all do. We all do.
To kind of be happy with just like the mundane and the everyday. Like, no, there's no big call today. There's no big, but like
the
find
journey.
Something fun to do.
The journey. Right. Enjoy the journey as opposed to just the destinations.
And if you listen to all the old people in your life, like that's when people say like, what's the one thing you've learned in life, or the one thing you'd suggest, it's always like learn to like just be happy with where you're at. Don't look ahead, don't look behind. And it's like within film, that makes total sense too. Right. Like don't look at your past work and don't think about the work you're going to make. Just focus on the work you're doing right now and do it the best you can.
What is the biggest fear you had to overcome to make your first films?
It's a tough one. Biggest fear probably would just be financially related because they were short films. So there wasn't a ton of requirements as far as like getting funding. So it was all our money, but it was like putting in the time and the money when that time and the money, specifically the time of like when our one income stream was focused on me spending time on it and taking time away to do something new. If that didn't work out, all of a sudden we're like bankrupt. So pretty much just financial strain and taking time to put it into something where there's no guaranteed financial return.
You mean like the film business?
Right. I mean, because to me, like anything as far as the actual like part of the film, it doesn't scare me too much. Like it kind of makes sense to me, but not knowing where it's going to go and not knowing where it's going to end up and how you're going to make money on it. Like it's like no matter how you shake it, that's a bad financial decision.
Fair enough.
So.
Now I was going to ask you.
It can be a bad financial decision.
Now I was going to ask you 3 of your favorite films, but you already hit kind of 2 of them. Do you want to throw another one in?
Yeah. So Raising Arizona, Last of the Mohicans, and I like when Fellowship of the Ring came out, that was big for me. Like I wasn't a huge fan of the books or anything, and I like Star Wars, but I was never a big Star Wars guy. But Lord of the Rings was like that. Peter Jackson, like, because I watched all the behind the scenes, so they had those,
of course,
like,
amazing
behind the scenes, and I just ate that up. So specifically, like Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers, and then the corresponding BTS like feature
8 hours,
film.
like 8 hours of behind the scenes footage.
I watched it like multiple times, just watching every single thing. So, probably those 3.
All right. And where can people find you and your work?
So savagestock.net is our new stock video site. And our YouTube channel is, Neumann Films, Neumann, youtube.com/Neumann Films.
Cool. And, you have a website too, right? Another one?
Yeah. NewmanFilms.net. Yeah.
Got it. Luke, man, it's been a pleasure talking to you, brother. I appreciate you being on the show and dropping some knowledge bombs on the tribe today. So I appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, man.